Matt Hasselbeck joining us live. 18 years in the NFL. His Seahawks played there for a decade, won a Super Bowl, and he's in a good mood about that. So I want to do two things.
Can I just ask a quick question before you go? So when you lived in Vegas for 7 years, was that bottle service time or was that like the family time?
This is great. So when I lived there, the mobsters, Tony Spilatro was still alive. Over the course of my 7 years, he got whacked in a cornfield. So when you see the movie Casino, my first couple years in town were the end of like Casino, where the mob guys got whacked, and then it became very corporate, and it was about cheap breakfast when I first got to town, 99-cent breakfast. There were none of those when I left 7 years later. So it became about boxing, gigantic pools, unbelievable spas. And then after that, it was bottle service, nightclub, and residency. But
I was hoping to envision Colin Cowherd bottle service guy, but okay. You got that in Chicago now if you want it. There you go.
That's right. So we talked about this yesterday. Sam Darnold has succeeded at the end in Carolina, Minnesota, Seattle, and I think he'll be fine with the new offensive coordinator. But there's a real growing belief that they're not going to franchise tag Kenneth Walker. He is not a pass receiver or a pass pro blocker, kind of a one-trick bully out of the backfield. I love him. But do you worry that losing him and Clint Kubiak, how long does it take to get sea legs? When you had a new coordinator, how long does it take?
Yeah, it's a big thing losing your coordinator, especially when they're really good, like Clint Kubiak. And, I think the big concern was who's he taking with him? But Mike McDonald's done a great job of keeping continuity. They lost essentially they lost Clint Kubiak and the quarterback coach, and that's it. Maybe a senior advisor, offensive line coach as well. But no, the continuity is there. And I think it was kind of a surprise pick going outside the organization, getting Brian Fleury as the OC. And, the tight who, he's coming from San Francisco as the tight ends coach. I think he's got an edge to him, though. I mean, when I think of him as a coach, you look at the guys he coaches, and George Kittle. I think George Kittle is he's got like a Gronkowski quality about how he plays. He plays with a smile on his face, with an edge, very physical. He's a playmaker. And so when you think about what Mike McDonald has talked about, what he wants to be identity-wise offensively, it's a run-the-ball first kind of team. Yeah. And another future star that he has that I don't think really broke out in the way that he will is tight end A.J. Barner. Yeah. So I do think that this is going to show up to be a tight end heavy offense. And you mentioned Kenneth Walker. Yeah, I don't think they'll franchise him, but they could transition tag him. They could sign him to like a 3 or 4 year deal. So there's other things on the table to keep him in play, especially with Zach Charbonnet being out with a serious injury this offseason.
We were talking about Caleb Williams, and I said there was a story this morning that came out of NFL.com where they said Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the NFC North. And I said, okay, let's forget resumes. I don't care about what you did. Let's talk about 2026. So if you go back and look at, and I think, Matt, when you talk quarterback, you have to consider their health and their cost. So Caleb does not get hurt, and he's 3.5% of the cap. So last year, he was the fastest quarterback, not Lamar Jackson. Last year, he had the longest completion. He is the lowest interception rate since he entered the league, and he was second to Matt Stafford on big plays. And so I look at Caleb, and I'm like, okay, so he is fewer interceptions than Mahomes and Lamar and Josh, and lots of that is because he's a small cap hit, and he's got better players around him. Okay, like there's no question. Bills have no Pro Bowlers on defense. Part of that is the $54 million annually to Josh Allen. So I said, is it outrageous to think he doesn't get hurt, he doesn't throw picks, he's an ascending player, no cap hit, better roster, that Caleb Williams enters next year as a top 3 or 4 quarterback? Does that just sound absurd to you?
Yeah. I thought you started out saying NFC North. Listen, there's a lot to like about his game, a lot. His improvement from year 1 to year 2 has been astronomical. Like, I've been very, very impressed. They built the team up. Ryan Poles built the team up around him in an impressive way, started up front. Ben Johnson, his impact on Caleb has been incredible. It's fun to watch, exciting. Caleb's got a clutch gene that you don't know if a quarterback has it till you put him in that situation. Yep. 2 minute, fourth quarter, like game's on the line. He doesn't flinch. He makes plays. He's got all those types of things. But I think like some of the things you talk about, availability is really important. Sure. Touchdown to interception ratio. Yeah, that is huge. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been the best in the game at that for years. He's got a quality like Aaron Rodgers that way. You know, really, I thought you were talking about just the NFC North. Like, would you rank him number one in the NFC North? And I do think there's an argument to be made there if you think about play caller, quarterback together. Play caller, quarterback together, would I put the Chicago Bears number one? That's an interesting thought. You know, the year before last, if you would have said to me, Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, I would have said, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Your gold medalist. Absolutely. Yeah. But there's an argument to be made for LaFleur and Jordan Love. However, then you go back to some of the other things you were talking about, just availability. You know, I do believe that's underrated and important. But no, I mean, if he can continue to improve the way he did from year 1 to year 2 from 2 to 3, then yeah, I think the sky's the limit. But that's not always the case. Some guys, sometimes that after that first year of success, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to have another great year right after.
You know, you bring up a good point that I didn't, which is when I consider quarterback, I said, not considering what they cost is like doing your family budget and not counting the Maserati payment. It's like, no, that's going to eat away at your nanny. You're not going to go out 2-3 vacations. Like, you have to count everything for your budget, including that second car you like to show off to your golf buddies. And my take is you have to consider what a quarterback costs. You're adding another element. You have to consider the play caller. So if you give me Ben Johnson, he's almost free. He doesn't throw picks. Number 2 in big plays. He is right now the number 1 bet for MVP next year. So it's crazy as it sounds. Everybody's projecting he's going to put up monster numbers.
And I could see that happening. I would also just say that, you know, just having gone through my career, one of the things that is absolutely true, every year is a little bit different. Every year is just different. And so would it surprise me if he came out and had the exact same kind of like success that he had this year? No, I guess it wouldn't. It would not. Yeah. But that doesn't guarantee it. Like I would tell you straight up, 2 years ago, the best quarterback, you know, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, top 3 in my mind, was Jaden Daniels. Like, he was so impressive, like incredibly impressive. And then the next year just, you know, wasn't quite the same. Drake May was the runner-up for the MVP this year. His year before, it was nothing like that, nothing at all. I mean, he backed up Jacoby Brissett for probably 6 of those games. I mean, and just didn't have that much success. So every year is different. I think that the arrow is trending up, and when you have a franchise quarterback, which the Bears feel like they do, then that can also help in free agency. You get guys looking around the league like, hey, where do I want to go? I want to go to a team that's on the rise. The Bears are on the rise. I want to go to a team with a franchise quarterback. And I think that everyone really feels like, hey, Caleb is that guy. So yeah, you can definitely get momentum that way as well.
You were lucky. You played for the well-run, you had good coaches, smart team in Seattle, also Green Bay. But you played for the Titans and the Colts, and you had a different journey. And I was saying this week, I don't worry about Fernando Mendoza. I do worry about Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders, because I said, find me the quarterback in the last 20 years that goes to a bottom-tier franchise and succeeds. And everybody goes, Joe Burrow. And I'm like, yeah, and he hasn't made the playoff 3 straight years. Like, at some point, once they paid him, the roster's thin. Well, C.J. Stroud. And he has regressed in the last 2 years. I don't worry about Mendoza. I think he's Matt Ryan plus, and Matt Ryan was very good. But you, in your career in the NFL, I think the gap in locker rooms, travel, coaching, training is pretty broad. You have always talked about your good experiences on this show. Was there experience, or did you have teammates that talked about organizations that didn't have it buttoned up? And like, what did the story shock you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you go back to the controversy that was this NFLPA report card and the NFL kind of going at it in court and saying, hey, we don't like that. We don't want the players sort of grading the team. I mean, this is what you did back in the day with your cell phone.
Right.
What's it like where you are? Back when I played, it was things like nutrition and, some of those type of things. The one place I was, like I parked in the parking lot. By the time I pulled into my parking spot, the chef in the kitchen was already working on my veggie omelet. Like that's just how it went. Another team I was on, I'd come in the building, one of the first people there, there's an igloo cooler with 2-hour old like breakfast sandwiches that were just sitting in there. You could grab one if you wanted. Like it just was like a different experience. Lunch was provided at one place, and another place it was, you'd be in line at Subway with your coaches, like with your cleats on. It just was a totally different vibe. So wow. I do think there are certain teams that are cutting edge. They're ahead of the curve. They spend money to make money. They make it feel like this is not work. Like we're just having fun. We're at a family. It's contagious. And then, then there's other workplace environments that are not that way. But I think that the main thing that I would point to for success is, particularly like in my experience with, you mentioned the Packers and the Seahawks, like the football people were very much in charge. There was no owner coming in and saying like, hey, I went to this alma mater, I need to draft that player or something like that, right. Which that can happen, throughout the NFL where you basically aren't on the same page on draft, on free agency, on players you're going to keep and some of those kinds of things. So not every team is the same that way.
Yeah. So what do you do now in the off season? What over the
it's a good question, Colin. I'm just trying to figure it out. Like the football season was so fun. Luckily, yeah. I've got a middle daughter who plays lacrosse at Stanford, and they're having a run right now. They're a top 5 team. So big matchup, Syracuse versus Stanford in girls lacrosse this weekend. So looking forward to that. But no, listen, the combine will be here shortly. I'll be at the combine. I'll be working with some of the wide receivers and quarterbacks at that. You've got free agency right after that. A lot of these coaching staffs are being filled there. I think it's fascinating. 10 new head coaches, 20, 21, 22 new offensive coordinators in the NFL. That's kind of why I say every year is different. And so I really think that being an NFL fan, you can do that 12 months a year, 365.
Let me ask you this on the way out. Aaron Rodgers, 42 years old. Do you think he comes back to Pittsburgh? I said earlier, he's got a very casual timeline in a very urgent league. Everybody likes answers now. Everybody's intense. And he's kind of he's a little bit of a Hollywood kind of lifestyle, kind of like, let me see how it lands for me. Let me get into character. I need time off, which that's his personality. If you are in business with Aaron, that's his personality. He's upfront about it. He's totally authentic about it. He doesn't deny it. He's kind of very LA chill, Malibu chill about it. Would you bring him back if you were the coaching staff?
Yeah, I think he wants to play football, but with a caveat, only somewhere that plays in his offense with his verbiage. Someone that age, I lived it. You don't want to try to learn a new language. You don't. You like if it's in Pittsburgh with Mike McCarthy or someone that runs that same offense, yes. If it's not, then no. He doesn't want to get in the huddle and have to think about red, left, swap, tight, close, Z right, sprint right, G, U corner, half back, flat, on one, ready, break. Like he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to wear a wristband. He wants to own the offense. And so it's got to be in that kind of a system for him to come back in my mind.
Good stuff. Good seeing you, buddy.
Good to see you too.
Matt Hasselbeck, 18 years in the NFL.